Well, good morning, everyone. I thought I'd come on here this morning and have a little coffee with you, talk about being prepared. Being prepared for what's coming down the road. Hello, Lisa. Since these two storms that folks has been up against back to back and people losing everything, it's just it's just something that we need to think about. I've been thinking a lot about it. You all know me anyway. I'm sort of a prepared type of individual, but I've had some thoughts, and I'd like to hear you all's thoughts about it. What you do to prepare, what you think you could do better, things of that nature. Good morning, Tammy, Chrissy. Hello. Good morning. We're talking about preparedness this morning. Now we know that we're being prepared to go to heaven. That's one of the main things that we're doing. While we're getting ready to go, though, we still live on the earth, and we still have to eat. We still have to have clothing, food, and shelter. Okay. So that's just some of the things that I'd like to talk about this morning. So, who's got some questions about this before I get into my particular discussion? In the area that you lived in, how much damage did you have in South Carolina, Tammy, or wherever you live, uh, Chrissy and Michael? Roswell. Wow, Michael. You live in Roswell, Michael? Feel free to ask some questions, you all. I'm not in no hurry this morning. I'm just having a cup of coffee and was just thinking about this kind of stuff. Oh, you're not in Roswell. Look, I was getting ready to say, I've been to Roswell one time. Okay, Tammy. Like I say in there, Michael, I've been to Roswell. I drove through there a few years ago, going to New Mexico. Well, I was in New Mexico and Roswell, obviously, but I was going through the mountains there, going to Alamogordo. Very beautiful, beautiful ride. One of the prettiest rides I think I've ever took in my life on a highway. Some things to think about. You know, we all of us has got a refrigerator. We've got probably a freezer that we keep stocked with things that are perishable. In other words, and if we don't have any electricity, then we'll lose that stuff. Either that, or we will cook it all, and that's not generally is not feasible because you've probably got $200 or $300 or more than that worth of groceries in a freezer. The meat you've went and purchased or you've killed during the hunts and things like that. So I was thinking the other day about how much money do we spend. Let's say you're out of electricity like we was for 4 days. Okay. How much money did I spend on the generator, putting gas in the generator versus the cost of the groceries that's in the freezer? Because the longer the power stays off, the more it's going to cost you to run a generator. I don't care whether it's one of them whole house generators or just a little generator like I've got to keep the freezers going. So I was thinking, you know, how much did you spend in 4 days, and was that worth the cost of the food that's in the freezer? In other words, did the cost of keeping it outweigh the cost of cooking it up and going ahead and eating it and having a get together with some people and just finishing it off. Because the longer the power's off, the more it's going to cost you to keep the food that's in the freezer. Okay. That makes sense. So what I was thinking was, in the long run, maybe I should start transitioning over to non-perishable food. All of it. Non-perishable food, stuff that it don't have to have refrigeration to so that you can use it long term. Because in the beginning there was no refrigeration, so meat was either dried or salted. That's how it was stored. Period. There was no refrigeration, so salt was a big thing. Salt was money in olden times. That was to keep people from having to eat jerky all the time. You either eat it fresh or you dry it and turn it into uh, you smoked it or you salted it down, one or the other. And pork and stuff like that, they done that all the time. Not necessarily deer and elk and other animals that they kill. They would literally turn that stuff into dried jerky to keep it from going bad. But nowadays, when electricity goes off, we're used to having electricity, so we like our electricity. We're wondering when it's going to come back on. But if it's like down in Florida, over in North Carolina, bless them people's heart, they're still without electricity because the whole grid got washed away. All that stuff got washed out. Not necessarily the power station, but all the poles are down. All the places to hook them up to, there are no houses to hook them up to in some cases. So those people are in dire needs, in other words. So what do you all think? I'm going to take my cell phone, you all, and open it up so that I can see what you all are saying. If I can find myself here. There I am. I think there I am. Yeah, people who are using that kind of stuff, the diabetic are, Chrissy, yep, that would be something to think about. What I was thinking, if it like, since you brought that up, you're bringing up, you know, medical supplies. Uh, Gosh, we probably never have everything. Well, who can afford to have it all in stock for a year? Nobody, probably, that's listening to me. And if you can't get your hands on it, then that puts the person that needs it in a health situation where their health is going to deteriorate really rapidly. So if you had one of those smaller containers that would stay cold but not take a lot of electricity to do that, then you could keep those medical things cold that way instead of having a whole freezer that in a refrigerator full of stuff that if that if you let it go more than 24 hours, it's going to start thawing out and then it's going to go bad or you're going to have to cook it. Hey, Michael. And I'm talking about Michael Burner there. Hello, brother. Man, I sure do love that flint you sent me. Looked at the mailbox. The mailbox was swagging. I thought, my God, what's in the mailbox? I open it up and there's at least 20 pounds of chert in there, buddy. I really appreciate that. Michael, that's a good idea, and I'm going to do the same thing. In other words, I want to transition over to stuff that, God forbid, another storm comes through here and does the same thing all over again. This is the second hurricane that's really done some destruction up here in my lifetime that I know of in 71 years. We had Hugo, and then we had this storm, and it really done some major damage. And of course, the flood. So, anybody else got any ideas? I know that dried lentils, beans, whatever those things that you grow in your garden that you can dry, those things are actually better for you if you do not cook them beforehand, because if you can them under high pressure, you kill a lot of the vitamins that are in food. They fill your stomach up, but they have no vitamins in them. So the dried stuff would be a whole lot better for you. Uh, just brought back at a low temperature so that you could eat the stuff and survive. Yeah, that's right, Michael. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But if you think about it, people down in Asheville, North Carolina, don't have a basket anymore. There's actually people up here in Virginia that lived along the New River that don't have a house anymore. The water got up over 19 and 20 feet high in different places. And that means that it ran a quarter of a mile or more out of its banks. And people who lived there for years, who never had that much water, lost everything that they had. So there's people that don't have a basket to put anything in. Floods come along, they bury everything in mud and garbage, and your house just ain't there no more. So those people are, I hate to think about it, but they're just in a bad situation, because for one thing, if you build a house in a flood zone or move into a flood zone, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen to you. Not if it's going to happen, but sooner or later it's going to happen. There's no question about that. Well, Michael, I hate that. I hate it when people have to go through cancer and chemo. I really do. I understand. Lost my daddy to cancer. It's just a curse on humanity is all it is. And if you survive, the good Lord's the one that lets you survive it. They might pump you full of drugs, but God's got to have a hand in your life. So has anybody out there ever ate any leather breeches? How many of you folks know what leather breeches are? Lisa, you know what leather breeches are. Some of you folk ain't as old as some of us, but leather breeches are beans that has been left in the pod, and they're strung on a string, and they dry them that way. And when you get ready to use them, hey, Lisa, there's two Lisas. Lisa Ramez. Is that how you say your name? Ramez? Ramez? Yeah, they're dried beans, but they are good too. And they still have the vitamins, the minerals, and all the goodies that the good Lord put in them in the bean. And you take them and you get you some fat back, hog joel or something like that, and you slap them in there, and you got a meal that's just really tasty. I can remember Mom doing it. I haven't done them in a long time, but I used to do it when I gardened. I don't garden up here where I live anymore because the white-tailed deer eat it before I get to eat it. Hello, Grateful Ed. Lisa, close, huh? I'm sorry. Yes, brother. Having a source of pure drinking water. And I was thinking about those people down in North Carolina that live back there in the Smoky Mountains. Their water source probably come from a well. Most of those people had a well. They didn't come from no city water source. So when the power goes out and you can't pump your water out of your well anymore, or you don't have a house to pump it to, your pump's still in your well. So you would have to go back in the mountain somewhere to a spring that you know where it was and get you fresh water that way. And yes, there's times when even that stuff gets contaminated because the earth's water, when you have all that rain, it builds up in the earth and it gets it dirty and contaminated because it's happened up here before several times. If you start pumping water out of your well and it's after you've had a lot of rain and it starts looking dirty, you need to clean that water up by boiling it. Yeah, I just said that, Huckleberry. But you'll have to get water somewhere. Now, if you still got your house, I'll get it off of the roof. Okay. I flush toilets right out of the 55-gallon drum that's sitting right out there beside the house. I flush the toilets, and I can also boil that water and drink it as well. It ran right off of the roof. And I've said this before. You can, since I've got a metal roof on the house, it'll run out off every morning. I'll have 2 or 3 gallons of water that actually comes from just the hot and the cold cycle. When the dew falls next morning, that water will start to run off the roof in the gutter and over into the rain barrel. So I keep that all the time because you just never know when you'll need it. Michael, that's a long time, buddy. And we are in a drought up here, even though we had a flood. We're still in drought conditions up here, even though that all that water that come from North Carolina flowed all the way up to the Ohio River. It come right through Radford, Virginia, right close to where I live. Hey, Troy, good morning. We just having a little chat about being prepared this morning. Okay, Ed, cool. Yeah, Justin, he's getting it done down there for sure. It don't really matter. One of the main things that you need to do, especially if you're using it all the time, is you know that sometimes boiling it don't kill all the bacteria in it. There are some bacterias that boiling does not kill. Okay, I don't know if you folks know that or not, but that's the facts. So what you do is you make sure that in your over there in the closet where you keep all the chemicals away from the kids and the grandkids, so they can't be playing in and opening it up and looking in it. You want at least 5 gallon of Clorox. I mean the pure Clorox, not this junky, gelled, smelly kind. Pure Clorox. You learn that it only takes a few drops to a gallon of water to sanitize water. Okay, just a few drops. I've looked it up a couple of times, and it doesn't take very much at all. Once you just put your 2, 3, or 4, 5 drops in your container. So you need to look that up, but make sure that you got chlorine, okay? Because chlorine will make bad water into usable water. But like I said, there are some pathogens in water that boiling does not kill. Yes, sir. Before they come out, see, chlorine's not something that you find natural in the elements. That's a chemical that's made. And it, before it would, they made it, hundreds of thousands of people died because they drank water that wasn't no good for them. They literally died from ingesting bad water. They got, uh, you know, obviously diarrhea, and it just flushed their system completely out. And when their electrolytes was gone, then they passed away because their heart wouldn't beat no more. So chlorine used in the right way is a very good chemical. It cleans up the water that goes through the sewer systems. These public sewer systems, they have to treat the water with chlorine. Then they put what is called dechlor in it, and they dechlorinate it. Then they can dump that dechlorinated water right over into the creek. You can actually buy a sewer system to put at your house out here in the wilderness. There's one next door here that my brother had installed. It's a sewer system that uses chlorine and then dechlor to clean up the water. But that's one of the things you should have in stock all the time is chlorine. Sanitize things that gets muddy water on them. You when you have a flood, everything. If you don't lose your house, you'll want to keep some things that the cooking utensils, pots, pans, glasses, bowls, cups, all those things. So you'll want a way to clean those up and know that they're clean. And one of the ways of doing that is using Clorox. Okay. No, sir, Grateful Ed, you can't use alcohol or spirits to do that with. That just don't work. For one thing, when you put that in your water, it's going to make you thirstier anyway. Because if you've ever been like I was in the old days when I was young, well, I was just like it. Well, I'm not going to blame it on the other kids. I used to drink, okay? I wasn't an alcoholic, but when I drank too much. And the next day I'd get up and I'd be absolutely dehydrated. I could drink a gallon of water. So spirits doesn't do it any good. I don't care if it's 190 grain, it ain't gonna do it a lick of good. Matter of fact, it's just gonna make you more dehydrated. And now, since Huckleberry, you're talking about them rain barrels, if they're above ground, sooner or later, the water in there is going to get the same temperature as the outside temperature, ambient temperature of the air. Well, sooner or later, that barrel's going to get that same temperature. And then there's when the bacteria is going to grow. If I had one, I would love for it to be buried in the ground out of sight, about 2 foot deeper than the earth. Then it would stay at that earth temperature all the time, and bacteria wouldn't grow in it as bad as it would if it's above the ground. You see lots of them out west above the ground. When I went to New Mexico, there are just literally thousands of them above the ground where people catch rainwater when it does rain. I used to live in a place that had a concrete one that was in the ground up on the mountain, and it held 5,000 gallons of water. And when it rained, the water would come through the mountain and run into this stone cistern that this old man who lived there was a stonemason. And he dug a very huge cistern and put it in there because his little old well was only 50 feet deep. So he had that cistern as a backup. I used it all the time. But it was under the ground and the water stayed at around 40 degrees all the time is how cold that water was. So bacteria wasn't apt to grow in it as bad as it would be if it was above the ground. When you start seeing green around the edge of your barrel, you know there's bacteria in that water. So you have to treat that water if you're going to use it to consume it, or even to take a bath in, as far as that's concerned. But non-perishable foods, I think, is a good idea, because if it costs you more to keep, let's say you got 20 pounds of hamburger, if it costs you more money to save that 20 pounds of hamburger than it costs you to buy the 20 pounds of hamburger, then you lost money. In my opinion. But everybody's got an opinion on that. So what's everybody else going to get into today before I let you go? Are you working? What's everybody doing anyway? You ain't retired. Everybody like you ain't like me is retired. I wonder where you was, Kim. You was putting up soup. You canning soup. I don't. Well, Lisa, paying the bills. We don't like to do that, but you got to do it, don't you? Storing some yams. Man, I love yams. Michael, you're retired. Attaboy. I've been retired now for about 7 years. I like it. Clock no more. Oh, wow. See, you have scrambled eggs every morning there, Huckleberry? I used to have chickens here too. I'm just way too close to the highway and got too many neighbors around, and you just if your chickens become a nuisance to your neighbors, they just don't like you no more. Retired there too, Lisa. There you go. So we had fried squirrel and eggs for breakfast this morning, you all. How many of you folks ever cooked your squirrel up in a pressure cooker? Take them squirrels, stick them in one of these Instapots, put them in there about 45 minutes, pull them out, they just fall off the bone like you're eating pulled pork or something. They just fall off the bones. Then you slap them over in a skillet with some oil, fry them up just a little bit, throw the eggs in there, scramble them up. You talking about a real good meal. Squirrel, or tree rat, in other words, is some really good food. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to go this evening and see if I can get some more. Libby Reed. Well, I know you, Libby Reed. I think I've known you now for 52 years, I think. She's making some hand-prepared pepperoni rolls, and she's making some, probably some loaf bread too. What kind of chickens you got, Michael Sean? Rhode Island Reds or Legrins? When I lived on the farm, I had 100 Rhode Island Reds. They piled the eggs out. You want squirrel gravy the next time. You're going to have to make your own gravy there, Miss Reed. I'm just kidding. I'll make you some gravy. You must sell them eggs, don't you, Huckleberry? Who buys them from you? 7,000 eggs a day. How much grain does them chickens eat? Are they free ranging? Barred rocks and blue. Yeah, I've had some barred rocks before. I don't know about them blue chickens though. Squirrel pizza. Hey, Libby, there's your recipe there. Lisa has made squirrel pizza. Oh yeah, that's the way to do it. Lisa, are you from? I can't think of the state. Hey, Grateful Ed, the only fat animal in the woods, really, that's like a hog is a bear. If you kill you a big, oh, you live in Missouri, okay. I was wondering where you're from. I was getting ready to say Arkansas, but uh, yeah, that bear that I see me tan the skin on last winter, that bear was as fat as mud. And that's one of the things that the old timers, the mountain men, whoever, they depended upon that bear fat. If they didn't have hogs now, if they growed hogs, then they used that lard. In other words, but you take them bears, then render them down just like you do hog meat, or you fat raccoons and possums, and render the fat down in them as well. Because Grandpa used to do that. He would take raccoons and possums. I know that sounds ugly to some people, but a raccoon ain't nothing but a bear. It's the same way. A possum ain't no different. They used to catch them possums. Grandpa would put them in a cage and he would feed them grain for about 2 weeks. He said that would clean them out. In other words, all the trash had been eaten. You go out the back door of the possum. Next thing you'd eat, and the poor old possum would look up and he'd eat toast, in other words, and Grandpa would be rendering him out. But there's in Virginia or anywhere else, as far as that's concerned, your bears or your fat. That's one of the meats that the Indians depended on, and so did the white men when they got here. The bigger the bear, the more fat there is on it. You can chin one out and it looks like a big hunk of lard. Hey, brother Jimmy, what's going on down there in Tennessee, old buddy? Did you finally wake up? Not. Jimmy's been up since daylight. Him and Jake's up there probably shooting at squirrels or something. You over, Lisa, you're over where all the country western stars are now when they retired in Branson. There is fat on groundhogs. Yes, sir, Grateful Ed. I've ate plenty of them. Hey, Libby, tell them that groundhog is good. Darling, them old groundhogs is nice. I had some barbecue going one time, you all. I shot a couple of fresh groundhogs, and sister-in-law and my brother come over to the house, and goodbye, Tammy. Have a great day. She come over to the house, and I cooked up that stuff really good. And put the barbecue sauce on it, put it on the bread. She's sitting there just a munching away on it. Oh my God, this is some good uh, barbecue, some of the best I've ever tasted. I let her get through about one of them sandwiches, and I asked her, I said, "How you like that groundhog?" I thought she was going to throw up everything she'd ever ate for the rest of her life. That wasn't groundhog, Mike. I said, that was groundhog. Tastes just like chicken. Yeah, it's kind of greasy, but it's okay. Yep, it sure is. But grease makes it slide down your throat better. If it's greasy when you eat it, it just slides down your throat. So we grew up eating that stuff when I was a kid in the 1950s. If it didn't come off of the little old farm we lived on there with mom and dad, growing the vegetables and the pigs and the rabbits and the chickens, it come out of the woods. It was either coon, squirrel, or groundhog, and possum, and rabbit. And of course, rabbit, they're some of the leanest stuff. An old rabbit he's pretty lean. You know what eating too many rabbits out in the wild will do for you? I mean, knows what happens to you when you eat too much lean meat out there in the wild, and you're out there, you're living off the grid, and you're just eating rabbit every day, and that's all you eating. You'll get scurvy, protein poisoning. Do you know you can get protein poisoning? Scurvy. Bloody flux, you'll bleed to death. Not a funny way to go either. Lots of old timers died from it because all they had to eat for the rest of the winter was old lean meat with no fat. But then some good old Indian folk showed them that they needed to add some vitamin C to their diet, and that cured them of scurvy. I like it too. I sure do like rabbit meat. But anyway, if that's all you ate back in the old days, lots of men, women, kids, all of them, they'd get scurvy and it would kill them. Protein poisoning. Who would ever thought that? Got to have your vitamins and your minerals out of your fruits and vegetables, in other words. But if you ever need vitamin C, just go find you a pine tree. Just go find you a good old pine tree and get you some of them needles off that pine tree. Don't boil them, just steep them in water for about 10 minutes and drink it. And you'll have a really good dose of vitamin C. Rose hips is another good way to do it. I mean, knows what rose hips are. When you flower, when that rose blooms, you'll have a seed on it in the fall of the year. Those are rose hips. If you go to the Wally World and buy vitamin C, it'll say, most of them will say with rose hips, because that's where the vitamin C is coming from. That's for sure. But scurvy just ain't diarrhea neither. Scurvy is something that will cause you to bleed to death on the inside. You can, Lisa. You can use those hips from the dogwood. You sure can. But be careful. They're very, very powerful. They're very powerful. Read up on the Lisa, on your dogwood. The bark off of dogwood can be used for headaches, and they all also used it during the Civil War for a oh shoot, I can't think of what it is. It'll come to me in a minute while I'm talking to you. They used it for quinine. Okay, when they ran out of quinine, they used the bark from dogwood to make quinine. Okay, so it's very powerful. Very powerful stuff. So don't just go cook you some of it up. Okay, study it first. But that's a substitute for quinine. Now I don't know exactly how they done it. I don't know if they boiled it in water or they distilled it some other way. I don't know how they did it. But there's a famous doctor that you can read about if you go through Civil War history and look at the surgeons and the doctors in the southern states. You know, the northern states cut all the supply off going between north and south. So the drugs and things that they could get from the north weren't going to get them anymore. So when they ran out of quinine, that's what they used. Michael, Sean, you told me where you lived at, but I done forgot where you live at. Northeast Texas. Okay, I done forgot about that. Northeast Texas. I drove through Texas a couple times, up in the Panhandle, going to New Mexico. It's a windy place up there. Your cowboy hat won't stay on your head. Another thing, Michael, if you touch the white lines in Texas when you're going up the interstate, you'll get pulled over. If you go to the right and touch the white line, you go over and touch the dotted lines on the interstate without passing. There's this one little old cop out there. He'll pull you over and give you a ticket or a warning. Yeah, look that up, Lisa. You'll like that story. Very famous doctor in the South. Just look up what did the Southern states use for quinine during the Civil War, and I'll guarantee you this dude's story will pop up. Very, very famous doctor. Jimmy, what's for breakfast down there this morning, buddy? I know you didn't eat no fast food. Did you have some oatmeal? I wasn't driving too fast. This guy got behind me because I was out of state. He thought I was a drug dealer, just be honest with you. He thought I was a drug dealer from Virginia because I was by myself, had long hair, had on fatigues. And when he come up beside of me, he looked at me and then he got behind me and started following me for miles. Of course, the longer he followed me, the more nervous I got. So I got up behind this truck and I was going to go and look to see if I could go around the truck without speeding because, you know, it's like 75 or something there in Texas. As soon as I touched the dotted lines and went back over behind the truck, here come the blue lights. Well, this old cowboy gets out and we're in the panhandle. He has to hold his cowboy hat on his head. He said, "You know why I pulled you over?" I said, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "You touched the white line and you didn't pass." I said, "That's illegal." He said, "It is in Texas." So I pulled out my gun permit and my license and showed him to him, and that calmed him down right off the bat. He said, "This is your wife's car," and he had already run all that stuff. How many of you guys watch that show on Friday and Saturday night there about the cops on patrol live? Well, they do that kind of stuff. They already run your tag before they ever pull you over. Anyway, he wrote me a warning ticket. Don't touch your white lines in Texas and have a nice day. I know it is that people from Virginia go out there to be trained. Huckleberry, I kid you not. And, you know, I'm not against that, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled. You had only coffee for breakfast, Jimmy. You got to be hungry by now. What time is it anyway, folks? I'm going to have to let you go. I like to hold you about an hour and just goof off for about an hour anyway. I hear you. I guess I'll get out of here and do something else, you all. I'm going to let you go. Any more questions about preparing, survival, water, food, shelter, anything like that, since that's what this was about. So this year, you all, I think I'm going to make some pemmican. How many knows what pemmican is? Amen, Michael. You bet, brother. Anybody out there ever ate any pemmican and know what it is? Yeah, nicotine kitty, that's what it is. Well, it's white people didn't invent pemmican, okay? The Indians taught the white men how to make pemmican. It's dried meat, grease, fat, in other words, dried meat, berries, dried berries, all kind of different dried fruits that are completely dry. They mix them with fat. Then they pack them into the intestine of an animal. That's exactly what they did. They took a deer intestine, buffalo intestine, whatever large intestine that they had. They would stuff that stuff in there. And believe it or not, they found that stuff after years and years that was still good, stored. That meat and stuff was still good and not contaminated. They found it before. I read a story about it, but it's just dried fruit, dried beans, dried meat that they take and pound it up into powder almost. They mix it with bear fat. They mix it with deer tallow. They mixed it with buffalo, especially buffalo, because you know when they killed buffalo, they didn't have no refrigerator, and most of the places out west never had no big source of salt. So that stuff had to be stored. It had to be turned into jerky, and then they would take it and turn it into pemmican. And that is what they would eat along the way. It's almost like a greasy summer sausage, in other words. As long as you kept it sealed up in its gut and didn't let it go from, get wet or something like that, this stuff stored. And then they would go along, and that's what they ate on the trail. They were not just eating dried jerky, they were eating pemmican. So I'm going to get a recipe this year, you all, and see if I can make some on video so that you'll know how to make it. Now, I've seen people make it on video before, and after they ate it, they just had a big old frown on their face. And I don't know if they didn't make it right, but anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Pemmican. All right, you all. 53 minutes in. Any more questions before I let you go? Appreciate everybody that had a cup of coffee with me this morning. Several of you kids out there. If I'm older than you, you're just a kid to me. You're welcome, Grateful Ed. I'm your Huckleberry. Are you a fast gun? Are you pretty good? Are you pretty fast with your gun? Hey, Christine. Good morning. Just getting ready to leave you. I'm sorry. We've been talking about preparedness this morning and just goofing off. You know what, Huckleberry? I like Maxwell House coffee. Now, my wife, sometimes I think we get Maxwell House or we get all that other name brand stuff, but I sort of like Maxwell House. Well, I was watched the movie Tombstone. That's the only time I ever heard I'm your Huckleberry. Okay, I don't even know what that means, by the way. So Doc Holliday, that's what his thing was. So I'm sure that that's where you probably picked that up from. Good old Maxwell House coffee. Good to the last drop. There we go. Miss Libby says we got Maxwell House. You know, when you open up the jar, when you first open it up and it burns your nose, it's really good coffee. How many's ever smelled really good fresh coffee? It sort of burns your nose when you smell it. Yeah. Doc Holliday, yeah. I'm your Huckleberry. Well, you all, I'm gonna get out of here and see if I can do something useful, like go take a nap, uh, go down in the workshop and see what I can make. Might fire the forge up. I'm just thinking up all kind of different excuses not to sit around up here in this chair. Okay. With that, you all, may the good Lord bless you. Catch you on Wednesday evening, the good Lord's willing. Yep, Christy, we did the same thing. Yes, sir, Tennessee Smoky. Sorry I got to run, you all. Have yourself a great day. Appreciate it.